So, hello everyone. Welcome to another round of discussing how to write books, how to publish books, how to organize your work, and how to get along throughout the process. Today, the focus will be really about the long marathon to write a book, because writing seems easy. You just sit down, write some lines. The next day, you also write some lines, and you edit up. But ultimately, it can take quite a while, and eventually, you have to think about how to manage your time, and you have to think about what are your goals with the book. What do you intend to do with it? The challenge is that, we have a lot of energy at the beginning. We think about ideas, we write them down, we have a story in our head, or we have all the facts in our head, and we edit up. But what is our long-term plan? How do we plan it out? And that will be the topic for today. So last time, or the last few times, I started the first episode of the series was about really writing your very first book and using the right tools for it. And I presented a template where you can simply insert your text and then directly publish it on Amazon, all with the right dimensions and all with the right margins. So that was the first one. And the second one, last time, I talked about the importance of having rules in your book and following rules in your book. So if you have like a nonfiction book, then you might want to think about, okay, how much research do you put in each chapter so they don't change the style with each new chapter. So you have a style that goes through your entire book. And for fiction books, you might want to write down your world, how the characters are, what properties they have. Is magic allowed in this fiction book, or is it not? So you go with really is in both cases for fiction and non-fiction books to have some sort of consistency for the reader simply, and also to have a clear message. Then what is your book about? Is it just chaos? Is it just do you want to cause chaos, or do you want to really jump between different styles, or is that simply an accident because you managed your work in a way where maybe 1 month you felt like that and you focused really on scientific research, and the other month you simply wrote some personal statements. So really to have some consistency for your work, to better manage your work, really have some rules. And I always say, your product, for example, your book, your website, your video, whatever, your product eventually will look like the organization behind. Of course, you can, at the end of writing, can always put an extraordinary amount of time into the book to rewrite it, edit it, etc., etc. But if you manage it right from the start, you can simply skip all that rewriting. Because at the end, when you finish and you have to rewriting is really costly. It takes time because you really have to check back. Is it still consistent? Do you still use the same words, etc.? And it's maybe a month ago when you wrote that chapter. So the real key is to produce as little waste as possible. And for this, last time we talked about having like a rule book for your fiction, or a style book for your nonfiction book. Okay, but what about? That's just one element. What about the rest? How do you really organize day to day your work, and how do you stay motivated? How do you do that? And one way, that's a more expensive way, but one way really is to have an editor by your side, and who acts like your good conscience, that you really can say, okay, that is you have to write it differently, or you should rethink that, or here you did change your style. So basically your editor becomes then your, well, living rule book that checks whatever you do. And but working with an editor, I mean, sure. I mean, if you like approach like me, my company, whatever you got in whatever form you text this, or in whatever state you text this, we will take it and we will help you to organize it and get it published. Sure. But in this video, I want to talk about how to make like our lives or my editors' lives easier, and of course more affordable on your side, that it takes less. So really, what can you do to prepare the work in a way that an editor or maybe yourself can work with your own ideas, with your own texts better? And that will be the focus of today. I mean, let's focus, and of course, like general tips how to work in a consistent way. And consistency, I mean, last time I talked about consistency in terms of contents, but you also need a consistency in yourself. Just imagine, like, okay, you were on vacation, you wrote 50 pages or so, and then you had a break with work, etc., and then you work sometimes on the weekend or so. You can imagine that your writing style was probably different during your really focused work on vacation, and maybe not so focused on the weekends. So you have to think about how to not also make your book consistent in terms of rules, but also how to make your work consistent. And there are some ways to get there. And for example, take note of interruptions. So I mean, it is all those tips I will bring to you. You have to examine them for yourself and see how they really fit your own personal style. Because we all we have different brains, have different preferences, have different reasons why we write, or have different time schedules. I mean, for example, myself, I have like long breaks, sometimes between two books, and sometimes I really do nothing but focusing on the book. And maybe in between, I gather notes. And whenever I start really a new book, the main thing I do is compiling those notes, editing them together, and having them really compiled in a coherent way. Okay. So I said about interruptions. So let's say you write something and then you approach, it works very well. You write paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, and then you notice something, okay, at this point I need to do more research. So I switch off my writing program and then browse, I don't know, Wikipedia, or read some books for a few hours or days even, and you go really into it, write the details down, but then your original flow of writing was broken. Same goes for nonfiction books. For example, you write a how-to book where you ask, okay, how can I install this software or so? And maybe you're interrupted by some special situations, an error, or something very detailed point where something has to configure this and go that, and you have to really explain it in detail, and your entire work is interrupted. So and you can imagine like your workflow like a really wave. And depending on the height of the wave, you're going either really like bird's eye perspective, going from the top, writing really like an outline, or really the general stuff that connects everything. And at the bottom, you have really the details, like real definitions of individual words and how you get there. And the challenge is really to get with the flow and not get interrupted by having to go really into those details. Or if you work, for example, more on the design aspect in terms of videos, or if you have a lot of images in your book and you can't really find the right image. And then you spend hours and hours and hours to find the right image, but then your workflow is interrupted. And the trick basically is here to accept a certain level of low quality, or accept a certain level of having maybe this part not that well formulated yet. So my approach is, I mean, that's for me it's really obvious, but I mean it's a very powerful trick. I think is simply to add add a marker or a comment or something like to do. Okay, here I have to research that image, or I have to talk about this in more detail, and you continue later. And then you just skip that part and continue as if you have already figured out everything out, have found the right picture. Maybe you describe the picture you would have found, so that you have already a task then for later, or you simply continue at a later stage of your how-to process. I don't know if you know the joke, I think from South Park. So it's always like a 4-step process or a 3-step process. You start with something, then you do the second thing, and then you do the 4th thing. So they just skip the important part, but that is okay because you still have the flow of your writing. So if you want to Google it, that's the underpants gnomes of South Park. So they go one, collect underpants, and then nothing, and then third something like profit or something like that. So and that is the same with writing. So keep it in your flow of writing. Stay also in the level of detail you originally set up in your rule book, where you said, okay, I will research this stuff, but not like everything in detail. So maybe do references, or simply accept that you don't know what's going on here. So you say, okay, what's happening here is then up to the imagination for the reader. Or you say, okay, I'm no expert in this field and I recommend looking there and there. That's, of course, not perfect for the reader, but right now, because you want to get through the book and get to the end of the book, right now it's a good way to keep in the flow to finish the book, because you can always get back to that later and invest the time. So another advantage of this approach is also that you maybe later during editing, maybe you notice, maybe I really don't need that part. I can just delete that part. Maybe it's an unnecessary step, or maybe something has changed. So you can just skip that part and continue without ever having researched that. Because you might, while writing the book, you might learn something about your story, that it doesn't work right, it doesn't connect really, or you learn more about subject at hand, that you say, maybe, okay, I worked through all those steps, but it isn't really working. I need to do something else. So I skip that chapter completely. You've saved a lot of time. So write in the way where your goal isn't like to have everything complete yet, but write in a way where you learn the most about your story, your characters, your goal, what emotions you want to communicate, or the subject matter at hand. So that is one. Also, and that is also the next point for today is feedback. So that's something I talked about last time. It's about why you write. So of course, if you just write for yourself, it doesn't matter. So then you are the reader, you're the customer. So write whatever you want, and write. Well, really write off your mind whatever needs. So it's more like diary or self-reflection, and really to learn the matter. But if you have a specific goal, a specific reader in mind, approach those readers. Ask them what do they like about your story, and maybe tell them, well, here at this I know it's not a perfect story yet, and here I haven't worked out really maybe the climax of the story or so. Just maybe write in your book, okay, now it's an exciting sequence, and it might take a few days to finish that. But if you don't have the right words at that point yet, skip that. Maybe describe what's happening here in a more on a more emotional level, or if it's a non-fiction book, right? Okay, at this point, the person will set up the camera or buy the right camera, and I assume the person will buy the right camera, and they will maybe add later information about the different camera models and how they are different to each other. But for your test reader, for your test audience, they know, okay, yeah, sure, I can't use your book now really to buy a camera, but I can test read it, and I can imagine having now bought the right camera. Or I can imagine, okay, I'm thinking for myself how the climax would play out in detail. Or maybe just say, okay, the following is now just like in the movies, this and that with my characters. So you save a lot of time, but you still communicate what will happen, and you can get already feedback from your readers. And maybe the feedback is, but I didn't like the movie at all, or that scene wouldn't really fit here. And this can also, what I've explained now is really like an advanced script you already have, and here's already the book, and maybe just a few sections are not yet full. But you can also do that much earlier in your process, and that really comes to the next point. Start with an outline of your book. Use this tool where you say, I'll skip that, and it will be like in this movie, or it will be like in that book. Skip that and just build your entire book project based on this basic parts. And so as a start, I've explained like it's a wave, like, okay, here are the details, here's your normal writing, and here's the outline. That is the reason why starting with the outline is great, because then you can already get feedback from your readers and explain what the story is about. And hey, do you want to know how the story continues? And that might be exciting. That is something new. Go there, and then you really have that feedback, and then you can rethink about the project yourself. Because once you have started writing the book, you're basically married to the book, meaning you're really biased at that point, because you spend so much time, and you will come up with excuses or explanations why this has to be written this way. And this bias can really be destructive, because at the end of the book, at the end of your writing, you will have a book, and you can always give an explanation why you decided to go this way or that way, but these are all like excuses. Much better would have been if you really have approached your readers much earlier and then get there. Of course, if you're a professional writer, you already have your audience, you already have like your basic structure, how your book works, and what type of book sells, etc. So you already have all that, so you can rely on that. But of course, if you want to do something new, maybe don't like just write the book and release it, but maybe get into a conversation with your readers. How would you like this type of story? Does this speak to you? Or maybe, that is also something I mentioned last time, you go and just write the climax, just the main scene, and see that might be exciting, because then you already have feedback for your main value of your book. And that main value of your book, your only work left is like really to build the framework around it, explain the world and how they get there, and then build a suspension up to that situation or that climactic point. So that is really the way to organize your work. Really think not just in like a linear way of writing your book from chapter to chapter to chapter to chapter and get lost somewhere in the details because you have to research this, research that, research this, but maybe write a basic book really that's very simple, or that does a lot of forbidden things by referencing movies or books you have read or that other people know, and build your book that way. Or you mean for movies, I mean, you might have seen like a storyboard where they just put like scenes or like still images of scenes that are hand drawn on the wall, and then explain basically verbally, orally, how the movie will play out, and then ask their audience what is their feedback, how do they get there. One challenge with getting feedback is, of course, find the right people that are really critical. I mean, that don't like tell you, yeah, it's great book, super project, best one yet. Find people who are critical about your books, and maybe read feedbacks for similar books and how the readers found that, and maybe do some research what they didn't like about it, and ask yourself, can I use that feedback in my own book and address this issue and get there. Of course, it's getting complicated, but you're already seeing we're not even talking about actual writing. We're talking about like outlines, scenes, talking with readers, thinking about climactic part of your fiction book. We're talking about leaving out the details, all that, and we're not doing writing. We're doing really market research and really thinking about, okay, what does a reader want? And given the immense huge competition on the market with books, this is absolutely crucial, and you can spend half of your time, depending on if you already have an audience and know it, but let's say if you create a completely new book with a new audience, you can end up spending half of your time really doing market research. And it is a little bit of a trap to really, it is a trap to start writing, and then wondering about, okay, where's my audience? Why don't people buy the book? That can be a trap because you're biased at the point you've written the book, you've invested all that work, and now you want people to read it, but and you don't want to change it, etc. So you're really in a pickle here. So better get feedback at the point where you can still make large changes. Maybe it turns out they don't even want a book. Maybe they want a story like narrated by you, or they want a video where you talk about that. Maybe the video takes 2 hours to produce, or maybe with editing, etc., or a few hours to produce, and they don't even want to read a book. That could also be the feedback you're getting. So you save a lot of time just by making that work in advance. Okay, so just to recap. In the beginning, I recapped the other two episodes about, okay, your book needs rules, and explained, okay, what do you need to do to publish your book? And that was basically the bridge for today, the consistency. So you have to have some sort of consistency in your book and write on a medium level to have really to don't get into the trap of looking at details and losing yourself in details where you say, okay, I have to research now 8 hours here and this and this and that, and search for images and look up that, look up this, and only when it's perfect then I can continue. So you're losing yourself in details, and you don't even know when the book is finished and when you start editing the book, that this part of the book really will be used for your final book. So focus on staying like in the mid lane, or even start out really on the bird's eye perspective. Write a book where you say, okay, where you can approach readers already at a very early stage, where you say, okay, this is my basic idea. It will be like this movie or this book, and my special hook of this book will be this situation or this special character, and then you explain it how it will work out. But you can do that in a few hours. You don't need like months and months and months of of work and editing and writing and investing money, etc. So really focus on getting your outline right and getting that right for the reader. Okay, the hook for today was also how to approach an editor in that regard. I already said if you have a book, like my company, the company I run, we can take your manuscript at any state. If you're just beginning out, if you have an empty page of paper and you want to write a book, we can help to organize that. But of course, you would save a lot of money, and we would save a lot of time if you already have your basics ready. Like, what's your book about? What are the people you're targeting, and how's your general your book structured? So that already helps a lot, because then we can better organize where your book is going. Okay, and one way I already mentioned it. If you encounter something, instead of spending too much time on it, just put a to-do into your text, or just explain it in different words and just skip it, and don't lose your writing style. So then approaching your editor, so what do we expect? I mean, we the editors expect from you to have in your book. So I mean, one thing, of course, what helps is to have a list of personas or a list of people who you are writing for. That helps an editor immensely, because they can then think or help you exploring that. What kind of style you want to write? What is the level of detail they want? And maybe the editor can already give you feedback if it's too broad, your book, or if it's too focused on details. So the next thing is, and I mean, that can also, of course, be done together with your editor, is really to ask yourself, what is your book really about? Like in one paragraph, if you have 20 seconds or 30 seconds, like in a elevator together with someone you don't know or you know, and you have to explain what is your book about in one sentence, in one paragraph, and just explain it. How can you really focus in what is the core aspect of your book? I mean, I talked before about rules, like, okay, what style you do, how are the rules of your world, how much research do you want to do, but also this like summary or outline helps you to always put in front of you, am I still on track? Does this paragraph that I'm writing, does this really relate to my goal with the book? Or is this just like fluff? Because we can always take something, we write about something, and then basically add the entire Wikipedia article about that topic to that chapter. And lose in detail. So we really have to ask, okay, what is really absolutely needed for this book? Because the more you can cut, the less it needs to be edited. So there's like a joke in systems programming where they say, okay, the best system ever devised or ever developed is the one that you don't need, or that doesn't contain any code, because then it can't fail, because there's nothing that is executed. So that's same goes with the book. I mean, a paragraph that you don't write, I mean, is already perfect in grammar, perfect in spelling, and you don't need to invest any time in it. And besides this like elevator speech is often called, maybe also go down to a single sentence, to really get down to a single sentence. What is your book about? They really take this as an exercise and say, okay, again, this sentence has to apply to all parts of your book where you always ask yourself, okay, is my book really about this sentence? Because if you do it the other way, if you start out with your book, write a book, pages, 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 and then at the end you have to publish it on Amazon, and then you think, okay, I still have to write like a summary or a description, and then it gets longer and longer, and you notice, okay, actually you write about so many different stuff, you can't really have a really succinct summary, then it becomes really difficult to market, because then you can't really call your book like it's a book about how you, I don't know, improve your chances to find a job, but it's maybe a book my philosophy or something like that, because you wrote about so many different things and you can't really find a way to summarize it. And of course, at this point, you have a sentence, you have a paragraph, you have an elevator speech. At this point, you can also think, okay, what's the title? Title is a little bit more flexible because it will be used like on the market. So you have the option to later change it. Because sometimes it's just 2 words or something like that, and it really has to fit a certain market. So maybe you have an idea later, but title could also help with focusing, but it is already, I mean, a little bit too short, and you might not want to use it like as a way to organize your book. But it's of course also a reminder. Okay, my book is about X, Y, Z. So I have to ask myself with every paragraph, is the book really about this? Okay. So what else do we have? So we already have the approach of what is your goal? What are your personas? Then we had said, okay, there's a way how to write, how to skip really detailed parts, and just add a to-do to that part. And we also had the issue about focus with the title and then the outline. And then the question is really, how actually want your readers use your book? And this really should be very thought in a specific situation, and not just come up, well, my readers, they probably like ebooks because they're on the internet or something like that. You really have to think about, okay, how actually will people use your book? And this also affects, of course, the length of your book. So is it something they take with them on their vacation? Is it something they read like one ebook after the other? How long do they usually want to spend with one book? When is a book too long? When is a book too short? And this leads you to a length of the book. Because if you don't know in advance how long your book will be, then it's basically random, because you, again, lack the control of the detail. So you might lose yourself in detail and then write too much or too little. So you lack that, and you really should think about in advance, like, is it 25,000 words? Is it 50,000 words? Is it 100,000 words? And then really imagine, okay, if it's 100,000 words, I might need 10 chapters. Okay, I have 10 chapters. How do I use my original outline to split into 10 chapters? And how long should they be? And then how should you organize each individual chapter? How much detail do you want to bring into it? And you're again no longer in the pure writing mode, but already in the organization mode. And that is helpful, because you can always check later to see where you go. Of course, if you're starting out with writing, this might be difficult because you really don't have something like to compare, but it is something to think about. Okay, so we have the general goals, general ways how to organize your book. Let's talk about tools. Working with someone else, I mean, the basic way of working with someone else is, okay, you write in Word and then you print it out and then you send that manuscript to someone and they take their red pen and then they write a lot of comments left and right. That is one way to work, but again, you first have to finish the manuscript and then maybe you spend some nights and really refine everything because you don't want the other person to think bad about you or you want to remove all the to-do so that it looks perfect or something like that. So you really have to have some courage here, again, to present your work early and really have the courage to say, okay, yeah, I know this is maybe too personal or it lacks personality or so. It's like with singing. I mean, you really have to have the courage to open yourself in that regard and not think about what will the other person think about me when I give the manuscript to that person. That is a challenge. So don't wait too long before you hand over your manuscript. Okay. So I mean that is one approach. So I mean that's the old style approach. The other approach is really if you have want to work with a professional editor, I really recommend to also use a tool that is professional and up to date. And I mean you can use any tool, but the most important tool is to really see, especially now during the pandemic, or if the editor lives further away, work on it together and use a tool where you see what the other person is currently doing, what the other person is currently reading. And one tool would be like simply Google Docs. The other is what I usually use, like for serious books, is Overleaf. And for Overleaf, I also had the template available. And in Overleaf and in Google Docs, you see what the other person is doing, what they are changing. And especially in Overleaf, you also see all the changes on the site. And you see every character, every letter they changed. You see on the side a summary, what they actually currently have written or have replaced. And that is super helpful and will save you a lot of time. My own way of working with my editor, that's Connor Gregg on my website. So usually I write something during the week, and then we meet in a weekly chat or in a bi-weekly chat. I explain, okay, I wrote this, I wrote that, or wrote this, and then she will look at it, and then on our next meeting, or by our next meeting, she has edited it, and we go together through the text, through all her edits, and discuss each individual edit. Either I say, yeah, okay, I agree that has to be changed, or I accept that change, or it's something, okay, let's discuss. And usually it ends out with her asking me, okay, well, why didn't you write it? So she asked me, okay, why is it written like that? Then I explain it to her, and then she asks me back, okay, why didn't you write it in your book? And then, right, I could just copy what I just told you into the book. So that is basically going back and forth with the editor, and it is super, super helpful. It takes a little bit more time, but it saves you time at the end because you need less rewrites, and it always puts you in a position where you have to think again why you write it, why that part is important, or maybe you can just remove it, because if you remove it, again, you save a lot of time for later for editing if you make changes. Another way, another two tools that I really recommend is, one tool is Grammarly. That's from Grammarly.com. I will link it below. With Grammarly, you can basically either upload a text, or you can even use it in Google Docs and in the browser. And with Grammarly, you can have your text automatically checked. I mean, sure, it helps you with spell checking and with a lot of grammar. So that is already helps then the editor to really focus not just on fixing your spelling mistakes, because it is boring. Sure, it it pays basically, but it is boring from a perspective of an editor. And what we want is to really focus on the text and help you with getting a better format for your text. And if you run it before on Grammarly, that saves a lot of time. Also, where Grammarly helps is, sure, Grammarly is about spelling and grammar, but one lesson is always wherever there are a lot of errors or mistakes, that is usually also a paragraph where you should think again about the contents. Because it usually means, okay, maybe you have spent less focus on this part of your manuscript, and maybe you should think again what you actually wrote here. So that is also a good tool to do that. This is also like a lesson from software development, because I am also or was a software developer, and the basic wisdom is whenever you find a bug, then there's a high probability there's another bug or another error in the system nearby. Because it points to, okay, at this point you were tired, or there were some other issues with management or something like that. So it usually points towards, okay, this part of your book needs to be rewritten. And there are of course some. The other tool I recommend is Asana. I will also link that below. Asana is like a project management tool. I will also talk more about next time. That is really about basically Agile project management. If you never heard of it, Agile simply means that you approach a problem or project more in small incremental steps. And the challenge is in Agile to really split your project into those small steps. And of course, with books, the question is, how do you split your book into small steps? There are a variety of approaches. My personal approach that I like is I start with a topic, and that is basically my work process that I currently try out. I start with a topic where I say, I want to talk about this, so I just create a video and then have it automatically transcribed. So you can just take a recording or do it while writing. You can take a recording and have, for example, Microsoft Word transcribe it for you as just English written text or German written text, and then edit it yourself or give it to your editor, and then create a real article out of it, or a real blog article out of it, and then release it as a blog article. And then eventually, if you have several blog articles about different topics, take those different blog articles and put them together, because you already have like those individual steps then, because each blog article has maybe a few thousand words or 1,000, 2,000 words. Combine 10 or 20 blog articles into a book, into an ebook, spend some additional time editing, and release the whole thing as an ebook. And then you have, at every step, you have created a video, you have created a transcript, you have created blog posts, you have already managed to split your work into individual steps, and at each step you enriched the content with editing. Because, what I'm now saying is unedited. What I will then have as text will be edited, will be blog posts, and then when I take those blog posts and turn it into a book, it will be edited again to form really a book. But I have those fixed several steps, and I have those the split into individual similar parts of similar length into chapters. And all those chapters, for all those chapters, I use the same amount of time and preparation, so they all have those medium level of complexity. So that is an example for a workflow. And you also should think about how you approach your workflow. My own approach is always, whatever you do, use it twice. For example, what I'm now saying is, it's a video, it's a live stream for you. And the second use of the live stream is to have it transcribed as a blog article. Or vice versa, I write a blog article and then create a live stream out of it, but it is additional work. But of course, it is sometimes necessary because I first have to do the research. And then take the blog article, don't just release it, but also release it and also create a book out of it. And then when the book is finished, of course, you can do another video about it because now you have a lot of more knowledge how all those different things connect. And then you have like connecting things together. It's a little bit more difficult with stories because you don't like have this real split, let's say 10 different steps in that story because you have that arc. But maybe write short stories or just make a video out of yourself and just tell whatever comes to your mind as a short story. Have it transcribed, put it down, edit it, release it as a blog article. You have a short story as a blog article. Check your feedback, what you get from your visitors of your website, what stories do they like the most, and maybe then take the favorite story that maybe you like or that also all your visitors like, and extend that and build a whole bigger story out of it. That is also approach. So that is what I mean with like project management, organizing your work, splitting it into individual steps. So I didn't go into detail how to do it in specifically, but just to give you an idea what is possible, and that writing a book is not just linearly writing from beginning to end, but that you have to really include your readers into it, that you should think about how to reuse it, that you need to think about that you stay consistent, that you don't spend too much time on individual details, that you build in bridges, and that you also try to test it with your audience and pursue those stories or that knowledge where you see there's the most interest. Okay. As a summary, I read maybe two more things about getting feedback from your readers, and then I will summarize today, and then I say make an outlook of what I will talk next week. And of course, whenever you have a question, just write me to simply clemens@load.de or visit my website. I also have the contact formula there. So if you have a problem with your book and need help with that, I can help out. Initially we just look, okay, is it even feasible? How could I help, etc. And if you're really interested, then if you really want to go forward with it, I also provide paid consultancy. Okay. What else with feedback from readers? So I already talked about don't be afraid, have the courage to really, even if your story isn't finished, if there's still some private stuff in it or something like that, just get feedback early. That is really important. And I already talked about another thing, like releasing it as a blog post. So if you have a part of your story, just release it as a free blog post and just see what do people think about it. What do they give you as a feedback? If you're more advanced, you can also think about releasing a whole book of your series or so for free. That is also a possibility. For example, that's a common thing, like release your first book for free. You also see that with like series or so, that the first episode or the first season is free and the other ones are paid. So that is a common marketing strategy, and I think it helps both sides because the reader or watcher then has a clear idea what is it about, and you get additional viewers. What could be a problem is with like piracy, where you think, okay, but someone will steal the story. Usually not. I mean, there are cases in certain niches and certain parts where people just take your text and steal it. I think that is something sort of a niche. You really have to examine the market and maybe check if that is common in that niche or in that market. Also, that's how I do it. I usually sell my books with the goal of creating contacts, creating networks to really get a first contact with someone. So that is this is more a marketing stuff, and usually there's no piracy in that regard because I do a lot of references to my services. So if you write a book for your professional services, sure, someone might take out a bit of it or something like that. That's bad luck. But if your really goal is to create contacts, that's not so bad. So don't be afraid of that. Okay. Maybe some a little bit summary, or maybe some small tricks and tips at the end. So first thing is, if you want to approach an editor, do all the work with creating an outline, finding elevator speech, think about who you're writing for, etc. Sure, an editor can help with that, but of course it speeds up if you already have that in your mind. Then we use automated tools like Grammarly to check your text for spelling and for grammar, but it also checks basically the consistency of your text, because in parts of the text where there are many errors, there will be, you should examine those again. Okay, so one moment. And the other thing is to write or find a tool where you can work in a collaboration with the editor, so where you really see what the editor is doing and where the editor sees what you're doing and what changes were made. So that was Google Docs, or even better, Overleaf if you write in LaTeX. And the thing about that, the editor will ask you for every paragraph, basically, what do you want to express? And maybe already think about it while writing. Have your outline in front of you and answer that already for you. Also, think about how you organize your own work, that you stay consistent. Like, I don't know, if you can do it, take 3 months off and focus on that, or write every Thursday and Friday or something like that. Have something regular where you can push yourself a little bit, or have someone that pushes you a little bit, because it's always easy to not write something. And have a schedule, or if you're more that kind of a person, take some time off, really focus on that. Then finalize, even if there are details still missing. We talked about that. So just add a to-do, or just add it's like in that book, or it's like in this book, or at this point the camera will be configured or something like that. Add something just as a bridge, but focus on finishing something that you can really present to someone. Even if it's still needs to be edited, but you need to test your basic idea. Does someone want to read such a book? One way is, of course, to go the other way. Instead of saying, okay, I write every Friday or every Thursday or something like that, that you have someone where you really commit to the work, where you say, okay, I will deliver a blog post with a short story or a how-to or a new chapter of my nonfiction book every other week. No matter if it's then shorter or longer, but I will deliver something finished every week or every other week. That helps. So that is, for example, I'm doing with my live streams. I will have a new thing to present every Sunday. every Sunday 9 o'clock, and no matter how maybe it will be shorter, maybe it will be longer, but it will focus on having something every Sunday ready. So another thing is, but that is a little bit more dangerous, like really committing to a fixed publishing date. That's a little bit more challenging. I would actually say don't do that, or do this maybe as a starting point, but then work your way back and organize your schedule accordingly. Another way is just whatever you have, cut it in half. Like really, if it's a non-fiction book, okay, just remove everything that is too detailed or so. Just focus on the main point and focus on releasing that, period. Maybe have then a second book or a second edition, but really focus on having something finished and don't take too much time to get everything into the book. Same with like a novel or so. Okay, just split it in two and have a first chapter and second chapter, or first part of the series, second part of the series. Do that, get early feedback for one part, and then invest into the other. That is all from my side. So I hope there were some ideas for your own work. I mean, sure, as I said in the beginning, it depends on your personality type, on your way of working, if you're more an advanced writer or if you're just starting out. So maybe if you take away one or two ideas that save you an hour or two, it was already worthwhile, I hope. And I think it was interesting. So I hope we can then talk again and meet again next week. If you have any questions, if you want to talk about your book project, just contact me for free, and we will examine that if it's feasible and how I could help out. In this regard, thank you for listening, and see you next Sunday. Topic I haven't decided yet, so if you have anything specific, I have on my list still how to use video. So what I said today, like taking a video, your video setup, the software to transcribe text, like speech to text software. So that is currently my next goal. Otherwise, if you have any specific topic, let me know, and then we look into this. In this regard, as I said, thank you for listening, and see you next time.